Good morning, baseball fans, and welcome back to Dan's Vintage Baseball PC. Don't be fooled by the fancy name. It's just me and some baseball cards. But excitingly enough today, it's not just me. It's me and Curt Burner, the friend of mine from Twitter, who's also a Roberto Clemente Super Collector. And we'll see pretty much all of his collection, which is honestly quite impressive. And so I just want to start off, as I normally do, talking about Roberto Clemente and his life and his career. And so let's bring up some stuff here. Oops, that's a little too early. So Roberto Clemente, born in 1934 in Puerto Rico. He was the son of a sugar farmer. Even as a young adolescent, he worked with his father in the fields and ultimately ended up playing some baseball for local teams. He actually played for the winter leagues in Puerto Rico when he was about 18 or 19 and was discovered by a Brooklyn Dodgers scout. Yes, I said Brooklyn Dodgers because Roberto Clemente was signed by the Brooklyn Dodgers. He spent 1 year playing in Montreal, the Montreal team famous for having been integrated first by Jackie Robinson. Clemente played for Montreal for 1 season. And the bonus baby rule is how he ended up on the Pirates. The bonus baby rule was that if you signed a player for a certain number in terms of the contract, they had to stay on the roster, on the Major League Baseball roster, or they became a free agent. And that's the Dodgers got smart after they lost Clemente. They got smart, and that's how Sandy Koufax ended up on the Dodgers roster for several years while not really pitching that much. So anyway, Clemente's on Montreal, and they're trying to hide him. So all the scouts are coming through, and he's hardly playing at all. But he ends up getting drafted by the Pirates, who were the last place team and the first pick in the bonus baby draft. And he joins the Pirates in 1955 and plays 17 seasons. If you look at his stats here, you'll see that he started out in 55 and not particularly a power hitter. His early numbers are pretty standard. There's a 311 season there, but what Clemente says that he got stronger and more mature when he became a naval reservist for, I believe, 2 seasons. He didn't miss the seasons, but he did serve while he was, during the winter and during downtimes. But Clemente then comes into the 1960 season, a little bulked up, ready to go, and has the first of his many outstanding seasons and his first world championship with the 1960 Pirates. He makes the All-Star team that year for the first time, and then makes it every year after that, other than 1968. As you can see, Clemente won 4 batting titles, 1966 MVP. His coming out party was his MVP in the 1971 World Series. And then his final season was 1972. In his last game in the regular season, he got his 3,000 hit, famous double in the left center gap off of John Matlack. And then Clemente's team played in the 1972 playoffs, the National League Championship Series against the Reds. They lost in 5 games, heartbreakingly lost in 5 games. They had the lead going into the 9th inning of the 5th game. Johnny Bench hit a home run to tie the game, and then after that, the Reds got a walk-off win, and that would be the end of Clemente's career, because on New Year's Eve 1972, while putting together an airplane to go help out people who were suffering through the Nicaraguan earthquake, Clemente was on a plane that went down, and he was never recovered. And after that, a few months later, he was inducted into the Hall of Fame in early 1973 through a special session, through a special rule, and rightfully so. So that's Clemente's life and career. That's a short version. So let me do this. Let me bring on Curt. And, I forgot to talk about my cards. This is a baseball card. This is a baseball card channel. So this is my Clemente collection. It's not the complete collection. In fact, it's not all the cards that I own, because the 1956 Clemente that I own is at SGC being graded. And I just recently purchased the 1969 tops from a friend on Twitter, and we'll talk a lot about the Twitter community when Curt comes on. As you can see, there's the 57 which is the earliest card shown there. But like I said, I do the 56. Love this card. It's a third year, and it's a great portrait. The other card I want to show briefly is the 1963, which also I got from a friend on Twitter. It is a PSA 4, but it's a beautiful 4. And the thing about the 63 Clemente is that it's a high number and it's kind of a tough card to get. So happy to have that one. As you can see, I have the full run from 67, 68, which is raw because it's in a binder. I have a near set of that. 70, 71, I have the complete set. That's a binder. Of course, 72 with the flipping the ball in the air, the famous shot, and then 73, which personally I was old enough to collect cards in 73. I was old enough to remember Roberto Clemente and his passing on New Year's Eve 1972. So that card is a little bit of a bittersweet card for me personally. As you can see, it's a CSG holder, but it's a beautiful example, and happy to have it. So that's my Clemente collection. Let's talk to Curt now. Curt, how are you? Just wanted to introduce you to my viewers as a person who I know well from Twitter, perhaps the most well-liked and person who knows everyone on Twitter. Not the mayor of Twitter necessarily, but more the conscience and the soul of the Twitter hobby community. And it's really, really nice to have you here, Curt. And just wanted to say thank you for coming on. And you are the first guest in the history of my YouTube channel, and how appropriately so. So welcome to my YouTube channel, and let's talk about baseball cards and Roberto Clemente. How are you this morning?
Oh, I'm fine, Dan. Thank you, and I hope you are well. Also, thanks for having me on your show. This is fun stuff for me, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say, like, when I started on Twitter, like, you were one of the first people that kind of befriended me. You had been on there for a while, I think. So I was kind of a newbie, just getting back in the hobby, and I want to thank you for your friendship and support.
Awesome. So why don't you tell my viewers a little bit about you personally, as much as you'd like to talk about, how you got into collecting baseball cards, and how you got into collecting Clemente in particular.
Sure. Just, I guess, like most kids, I started collecting when I was a child, and my dad also collected baseball cards. So I think I got my inspiration from him, because we'd go visit my grandmother, and I'd go up. You know how when you're a kid, you're very curious and you want to explore things. So while the adults were talking after dinner or whenever, I would sneak upstairs into the attic and snoop around. And I found my dad's old baseball cards in a box. And, I'd flip through them and I'd go, wow, everyone knew Jackie Robinson, even as a 9 or 10-year-old kid. I go, wow, that's Jackie Robinson. My dad had Jackie, and all these cards. And my dad ended up selling most of them. So unfortunately, most of his valuable cards were sold. But anyway, I attribute my collecting to my dad. And
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think there's one of his cards that you still have, right?
I still have several. I have several of his cards.
Okay.
His favorite player was Larry Doby. It's funny because my dad had my dad's passed away, but he has one brother, and they both collected. And his brother was a New York Yankees fan and a Mantle fan, and my dad was a Cleveland Indians fan, and Larry Doby was his favorite player. So one of my cherished cards is the only Larry Doby playing card that survived his childhood, and that's the 54 Larry Doby. So yeah, that's kind of a cherished card for me. So I'm not that far removed from you, Dan, as far as age and collecting wise. The first year that I remember collecting cards was 1970.
Yeah,
and so
me too. Same year.
Yeah. So I remember getting that Roberto Clemente 1970 Roberto Clemente card out of a pack. And I also remember I really started collecting in 71, though. That's when I hit it hard. And I was like, every spare dime that I had, I would be down at the grocery store buying packs.
12 cents in New York. you you had a little better version of the price over there. Were you where did you grow up?
I grew up in West Virginia, and
Okay.
yeah, so at 18 years old, I went into the military, and I've never lived in West Virginia permanently since I left when I was 18. I live in Northern Virginia now. I retired from the military after 23 years of active duty service, and so I'm retired from the military, and I live in Virginia, and just kind of looking forward to maybe retiring for good in the
Yeah.
next several years.
Tell me about it. Well, I know you and I are both afflicted with the same problem that we're both attorneys. So yeah.
Yeah,
So
I'm an attorney for the federal government. I think most people are aware of
yeah,
that, but
I'm an attorney for me, so
yeah.
and my family. So your Clemente collection, or I'm sorry, connection, is because you were Pirates fans living in West Virginia, right?
That's right. The town I grew up in north central West Virginia, which is close to Pittsburgh. West Virginia is a divided territory, divided state. About half the state roots for the Cincinnati Reds, and the other half roots for the Pirates.
Wow, they're
So yeah.
two seventies powerhouses. They met in the playoffs, what, 3 years, 3 times or 4 times in that
Oh
in
yeah,
that
that was a huge rivalry. I'm glad they weren't in the same back then. You know, back then the divisional play was so important, and the Reds were in the West and the Pirates were in the East, so they
right?
didn't have to battle each other, you know, for an initial playoff spot, but they often battled in the league championship series
Yeah,
back then.
1970, 72, as I talked about.
Mhm.
I guess
Yeah,
74 and 5 and 79. So there's five of
yeah,
them actually. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, and you know the big red machine, that was the Pirates' nemesis.
So one of the things about Clemente is that I feel like he didn't have a national profile until the 1971 World Series, which is when, in 1971 I was a baseball fan, but I was only like 8 years old or 9 years old. So no, I was not even 8 in that summer. But I remember the 1971 World Series very well, and it seemed to me like that was his coming out party when the national media and national baseball fans finally recognized, oh wow, this guy is amazing, you know. And it's sad that that he only had that season, and he was what, 36 at that point, or 37, and he only had that season, the next season, and then in 70, obviously the end of 72, we lost him. So I feel like you guys, being the Pirates fans, had a little more of an opportunity to see Clemente, at his best and for a longer period.
Yeah, I think you're right on. I think you're spot on. You know, growing up a Pirates fan, well back then, as you know, we only got to see like one or two games a week, national games broadcast, and then you would get all the away games of your home team. So we always saw the away games for the Pirates, and I was always tuned into those. But you're right, I got to see Clemente play for like you said, for 4 or 5 years, from the time I was 8. I got the pleasure, and I actually got to go to Pittsburgh. We didn't go to Pittsburgh often. It was about a 2 hour drive, hour and a half, 2 hour drive. So it's not like we just would go to all the games, but we'd go to a couple a year. My dad would take us to a couple games a year. So I actually got to see Clemente play, a handful of times, which was a real treat.
Yep.
But yeah, you're right. I understood fully how great Clemente was because I got to see him play, on TV regularly, and actually got to see him play in person. And it always mystified me how, he kind of didn't get the accolades that you would expect, because to me, he was always the guy that you'd want up in the clutch because he could hit any pitch. I mean, they say he swung at bad pitches. Roberto's answer was, "It's not a bad pitch if I can get the bat on it." You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but I saw him personally, come up in the clutch. Every time he came up in the clutch, he would get a hit or he would make something good happen, and I saw that firsthand. And to finally see him, break through on a national stage, like you said, in the '71 series, was like a dream come true for me. I was so happy. And then, the height of that joy was matched by an equal low when he passed away on New Year's Eve,
I
1972.
I still get upset thinking about it.
Yeah,
There's two sports deaths. Or there's more than two, but there's two major sports deaths that still get me upset. One is, of course, Clemente, and the other one is Munson.
yeah, Thurman
Munson
Munson.
was when I was a teenager, and it was just physically painful. And so I
Yeah,
can imagine being a Pirates fan,
yeah,
just
it was
having
like
that glory in '71, and '72 was a heartbreak, but you'd figured they'd be back the next year, you know.
yeah, it
Uh,
felt like someone just tore my heart out of my
yeah,
chest and just like ripped it up into a million pieces and threw it on the floor and started stamping on it. It was just it was incredibly painful as an 11-year-old.
yeah. So let's. This is a baseball card channel, so
Yeah, let's
let's
go.
go back to the cards here. So what we have here is you sent me a lot of pictures. We're going to talk about them all. Some of them I combined into slides, so we we're not going to have as much fun, I think, maybe because there's a lot of slides. But let's talk about this one, which obviously took my breath away when I saw it. And I looked through, and I was like, it's funny because when I do these kinds of things with my collections, I do them in year order. And in this one, you kind of do it. It's like a collage, and it's cool because it all fits in together. And so I was like, well, maybe I should stop being so anal and doing everything in order and start doing these beautiful ones like this. So anyway, wanted to talk about upper left-hand corner. I see the 65, but then of course I see a card that I don't own, the 1955 Clemente, the rookie card. Why don't you tell us about how you got that, when you got it, circumstances around that, and make me feel super jealous for not having it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because um, I was such a Clemente fan that I had basically all of his base run before I got out of the hobby, and I got out of the hobby when I entered high school. So I collected from the time I was 8 till maybe 14, something like that. But during that time, I'd collected most of Clemente's base cards, except for probably the 55, the rookie card, and the 56, and maybe the 57. But other than that, I had acquired all of the base cards, and then I got out of collecting altogether. And then when I had kids, and my oldest son got to be about 8 or 9 years old, I started collecting again, and so um, I ended up buying two Clemente cards, two rookie cards, one for each of my sons. And I recently sent them in and had them graded. And these are the two that I recently had graded.
Oh, let's go back to childhood. You have an extra. I'll take one of them.
Yeah. Well, they're kind of spoken for, right?
Oh
So
well.
yeah. So but anyway, one of them's a 1.5, the other one's a 4 miscut. But this is the one that was really nice because I got it from a good guy on Twitter that we all know. His name's Chris Burkhart. His handle is at CTB Cards. And I think,
Yep.
if you've been on Twitter for more than a day, you've gone to Chris's website and you probably bought a card from him. But this rookie card, try to take the glare. This rookie card I got from Chris.
Nice.
And I got it raw, and I sent it in and got it graded. I was a little worried because the upper right corners, there's a tiny little bit of paper loss in the right corner. So I wasn't sure how they were going to view that. I mean, they could have easily graded it a 1, but they graded it a 3. So, that was one of the good luck stories I've had with PSA.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you know I'm an SGC guy and really not a big fan of PSA, but anyway, so there's a few things on here that I'm not 100% familiar with.
Yeah.
I think if you go to the upper right corner, you got the 62, and then the one right next to the 62. Is that the one is that some sort of stadium issue?
That card right up there in the upper right hand corner next to the 62 is a 1972 Pro Star
Okay.
card, and it's a big card. It's a postcard size card, and it was produced in Canada.
Oh,
And
okay.
you can find those, pretty much you can find them around. They're not all that scarce. but they're beautiful cards. They didn't have any. They don't have any Pittsburgh logos. They don't have any team logos on any of the cards that they produced in that set because they didn't have the copyright for it. But
Right.
there are a
Can
couple
you?
cards that I can talk about that I've, and just let me say, the cards that I have right there, like I'm very happy with my collection. Those are all playing days
Yep.
cards, except for there's one memorial postcard that's on there, and I came across that just by happenstance. It's a '73 memorial postcard from Allied Printing, and that's the card itself. And I know it's
Right.
the glare on the screen.
No, that's okay. I
But
can make it out. No, that's
yeah,
beautiful.
but you'll find that in there. And then there are some, but like I said, I'm not really looking to add to my collection, Dan. To be honest with you, there's one card, and I think I mentioned this to you that I would love to have, and that's the prototype experimental 3D card that was produced in I think '69.
Yeah, yeah. I think I just saw that. You may have been in the chat at the same time. That
Yeah,
there's an auction for that. It's
yeah,
$21,000. So
yeah.
I don't know
See,
about you,
I
but I'd
can't pay
never
that.
have
Oh
20,000 for a
no,
car.
I can't pay that for a piece of
Yeah,
cardboard.
yeah,
I
no,
can't.
no.
I can't
Um,
justify it. So,
so
but I'll keep an eye out for it. And if if I ever run across one, maybe in an antique store or somewhere, maybe I'll snag it. But
yeah,
um,
you're gonna have to do the get a beater copy first, and then
yeah,
upgrade eventually. So, why don't you tell us what from this group, what cards you feel like you want to show us in particular?
yeah, I grabbed a stack, and so this year there are several
What?
cards that I was able to add that I had my eye on, but I'm not, like I said, I'm not in a big rush, to get. So there are cards that are on my list, and if I come across them and they're a decent price, I'll get them. One was this the Roberto Clemente Post card, the Post serial card.
Yep. Hmm.
So I added that this year. One that you'd mentioned before, it's a 1970 stadium issue. It's called the Pittsburgh Pirates autograph cards. And the reason the 1970 card, they produced these in Pittsburgh at Three Rivers Stadium for several years. The 70 card is more scarce than the other years because that was the Three Rivers Stadium inaugural year, and they only produced these cards for half a season. And so that's why you don't find as many of them. Just a couple other ones. One that I wanted to always have was a Cons meets baseball card. So I was
Oh,
able to get this one this year.
I do not own any of the cons. I see the
Yeah.
prices and run away.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to own all of them.
Yeah, yeah,
Like I said, I don't want to own every Roberto Clemente card. There are a gazillion, like even the playing days Roberto Clemente cards. There are a gazillion of them. If you
yeah.
look
It's
at
part.
the what's
Yep.
that?
Yeah, I was going to say
Yeah.
that's part of the reason why I sort of stick to flagship, and when an oddball comes my way, I'll pick it up, but I don't go out of my way to find the oddballs. But they come to me, and obviously a lot of them came to you, as we could see here. Um, you have another card. I'm sorry, I interrupted there. Go ahead.
No, that's pretty much it. I mean, this one's kind of scarce, and this one's a nice get if you can get it and you're a Roberto Clemente fan. It's the '71 Fleer World Series set.
Uh-huh.
This is part of the extension set, and
Nice.
so yeah, it's a little more scarce than the regular issue Laughlin Fleer cards.
Yep.
And that's a sweet card. That's one that I actually pursued, that I always kept an eye on.
It's is that say 414? Was that his average during the season? During
That
the
was
series?
that's when he won the MVP.
Yeah.
That was his average for the World Series.
For the World Series. That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Game 7 of that World Series is on YouTube in full color, and it's a really nice recording of it. And I've watched that, I'd say, within the last couple of years, and I would recommend any viewers here to go back and watch that game. And Clemente, I believe it's a home run in the third inning.
Yeah.
And he set the record for most hits in a series, which has since been broken, but at the time, it was quite a big deal. Or is the seventh game the one with the triple? I forget.
No, he had a home run. It was a
Yeah.
homer. It was an
Yeah.
opposite field homer off of a Cuellar
Yep.
hanging curveball.
Yep. You know better than me. So let's move on to the we're
Yeah.
taking a lot. We're having fun chatting. So I don't collect really any modern cards. I do have a few of these bat pieces slash uniforms things, but this kind of took my breath away also, and I thought it was maybe if you had some glue, you could break all these and put together your own Clemente bat. I don't know if that's something.
Yeah, definitely.
So anyway, tell us what we have here.
Well, like I said, in about 2006, that's when 2006. These are most of these cards are 2006, 2007 Topps triple threads. And so that's about the time when my oldest son was playing baseball in Little League and, collecting some cards. And so we kind of started getting into this the triple threads card.
Uh-huh.
And so, I pulled a couple of them maybe because they were pretty expensive. They were pretty pricey even back then. So we had maybe 2 boxes and I pulled one, maybe 2. And then I would look on eBay and I bought most of these, because people buy boxes and they want to get their money back for the box by selling, the Clementes or whatever. So that's how I put most of these together.
Okay.
And
I see the rookie. What's the rookie down there? That looks. I mean, obviously it's a reprint with a bat.
oh yeah, that's one of the Topps archives
Uh-huh.
issue cards. I think that might have been in the 2000s as well, the early 2000s. I'm not real sure. I've got that one, in a top loader in a box. I've got so many of these cards, I can't display them all. There are a couple really cool ones though that I like. And if you look on the bottom of your screen, the bottom left, the second one in is Mickey Mantle.
Oh yeah,
And
yeah, yeah. Yes.
yeah, that's
I
that's
noticed
probably one of my favorite ones.
I
And then the
noticed the
one
star.
right next to it is Honus Wagner and Roberto Clemente.
Well, that's pretty awesome. I did notice the Stargell. I think that's Mazeroski one, but I did not notice Mantle. So for a guy who collects Mantle, that's kind of on me.
Yeah, and that's
But
a cool patch because it's got a pinstripe and it's got dirt on it. It's dirty. The uniform's still dirty.
oh, that's great. Yeah, I guess the story is a lot of these relic cards in the early days of doing relics are actually legit, but now it's like some dude like puts his shirt on for 5 seconds and suddenly it's player worn.
Yeah.
So a lot of this stuff has become less reliable, but what you have here is mostly the early days of reliable relics. And so you have a Honus Wagner card. I don't have a Honus Wagner card.
Yeah,
All right,
that was a good one. So this is this is just our Twitter hobby community is so wonderful, Dan, and as you know, and people are so genuinely kind and genuinely generous. My friend Vince, his Twitter handle is at V Bandine fan. His name's Vince, and he sent me all these. He sent me all these. He sent me
nice.
the Clemente book and all those pictures and postcards, and
Is that
I'm
Three
so
Rivers?
great. What's that?
Is the postcard Three Rivers up there? I think it is, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a postcard of Three Rivers Stadium. It's one of my, it's beat up and it's got crinkles in it, but it's one of my favorite cards. I use it for a background card on a lot of my little things that I make up. Little,
Nice.
yeah. But everyone's. These are 2 yearbooks. I actually bought these as a kid. I sent away for
Yeah,
them.
the 72 obviously has the World Series champs from 71, so that's a really, really cool one.
Yeah,
73 obviously is bittersweet because you have the great 72 team, but then by the time they printed this, I guess Roberto is no longer with us.
yeah,
Um, and of course,
yeah,
73, as a New Yorker, 73 was the Mets coming out of nowhere to win the division and then upsetting the Reds in the playoffs and going to the World Series 7 games. But part of the reason the Mets made the playoffs that year, and nobody ever talks about it, is because the Pirates, had their heart and soul ripped out of them. So, that's a little bit of history. I'm not a yearbook collector, but I own many of them over the year, and over the years, and I think I have some boxes filled with them. But really appreciate these two for the not only just the the historical part of them, but the artwork is terrific too.
Really is. I love those pieces.
So
These are
bats,
yeah, these are two store model bats. These are Clemente store model bats. They're not professional. They weren't owned by Clemente or anything, but you know, if you grew up playing little league in my era, you used a wood bat. So
yep,
these are like 1960s. I dated them back. Use there if you go to the Hillrick, the Louisville Slugger website, it'll help you date them. And so these come from the 1960s era.
awesome, awesome. Hey, I didn't have I don't remember who was on my bat, but Bobby Mercer was my guy. But I don't think I ever got a Bobby Mercer. But I assume if you were in this Pittsburgh area or within hours of it, you'd have access to Clemente stuff, which is fantastic. Those are great. So coins.
Yeah, this is another particularly scarce item. These were issued only by Esso stations in Puerto Rico
Wow.
in 1972, and the coins aren't. I mean, they're scarce, but you can still get them. The Clemente one's the most valuable, obviously, and it's gold. It's the only gold coin of them all. The rest of them are silver, but it's Latin American baseball players.
Okay.
And the hard thing about this is getting the frame, the green frame.
Right. Right.
Like a lot of people have the coins, but they discarded the frame or they never collected the frame. And so I actually have the frame and the coins in it, just as you see
How did
right there.
how did you get that?
Well, it's one of my lucky eBay finds.
Okay.
It was on my search terms, and one day it popped up, and I was like, "Holy crap!" And it was like a 9-day auction, so I put a bid in, then I waited and waited and waited and waited, and I finally won it at the end. So,
Was the seller
um,
from Puerto Rico or was it an American?
yes,
Okay.
the seller was from Puerto Rico. So, and he didn't have a lot of feedback, so there was a lot of angst, on my part.
Well, I'm sorry. I said American. Puerto Ricans, of course, are Americans. I meant continental United
That's
States.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand. Yeah, but yeah, he is from Puerto Rico. I don't know how he got them. I didn't ask.
The only signature I guess I see. I guess that's Tony Perez in the bottom right, but I see Felix Millan, who
Yep.
in '72 was one of those Mets that we just talked about.
Yeah.
I guess Cesar Cedeno is in there. So, I mean, it's probably a bit of a pipe dream, but if you collected them all, that would be a really cool piece.
Yeah. Willie Montanez is in there.
Uh-huh.
Manny Sanguillen.
Oh, Rico
Uh,
Cardi, I see there too.
yeah.
Yeah,
Rico Carti.
that is
Um,
awesome. I
Juan
now you got
Marcel is
me.
in there.
Now you got me thinking. It's dangerous to get me thinking. So,
Yeah.
so these I looked at the 66 first, and I was like, oh, what is this? And I started like realize, oh, okay, I know what these are. So why don't you tell us
Yeah.
about both of these items here?
Sure. Like I said, I can't say enough about all the friends that I've made on Twitter, and these are two card art pieces that some friends gifted me on Twitter. The one on the left is it was a creation of John at Fitter. His handle is at PHP
Mhm.
Hitter,
Yep.
Hitter. Yeah, so he created that and sent that to me, and I'm forever grateful. And the one on the right was a creation of RP Bailey, who's also on Twitter. He
Hmm.
actually he creates he cuts cards and creates these things, and it's just beautiful just
Yeah.
to hold these in hand.
So
But
the,
they both
the the one on the left is that a 49 Bowman style?
yeah, that's a 49 Bowman style.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny because I was thinking I didn't mention it before that Clemente doesn't have a Bowman card. He could have had a 55 Bowman, but
Yeah,
history history
you're right.
denied us of that. But anyway, so what do we got? Oh, cups.
Oh, yeah, I've got several glasses for. I knew these were out there, right? But like friends just send these things to me, and like this is from Russell Dolly. He's a dear friend and a
Yep.
very generous man, and one of the best people you'll meet on Twitter.
Uh-huh.
Russell Dolly, and it's his handle is at I think at
Uh-huh.
Russ. But anyway, he sent me that. It's a 1961, and it's got the stats on the back, which is really cool. And if you want to go to the next slide, I think that's even more. Those glasses were sent to me by another Twitter friend, and actually, he's more than a Twitter friend. He grew up in my town in West Virginia for several years. We were best friends from the time we were like, I don't know, 8 years old till 13 or 14. Then he moved to Uniontown, Pennsylvania.
Oh,
But he
that's a
got
great
these,
story. And then
yeah,
you
he got these at
reconnected.
Eaton
Oh,
Park.
that's so awesome.
Yeah, and he has a son that works in DC, and I live, nearby DC. So when he was going over to visit his son, he stopped to visit me, and he dropped these off.
Wow. That's
He's a great,
nice.
he's a
Yeah.
great friend. Dan McBride's his name.
Well, good for him. So now we
Uh,
have what looks like a modern card to me, and then there's I think that's a like a metal pin right on the bottom left.
Yeah, the one on the postcard is from, it's a first day issue Clemente Memorial postcard,
Uh-huh.
and below that is a pin from 1972, and those were also given to me by Russell Dolly. And
Nice.
then on the right is a new card. It's a die cut card. It's a beautiful card. It's new. It's modern, and I don't go out and collect modern, but my another good friend on Twitter, Al Godwin, sent that to me.
Yep. So
Um,
yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying. Like I don't collect modern, but sometimes you see something like this, and if it's something you love and it catches your eye, you don't need to be bound by boundaries, so to speak. And I saw that photo and I was like, oh, okay, I know why he has that. It's because it's a freaking great looking card. So
Yeah, I love the card. It's gorgeous. It's very
yeah,
sparkly, very shiny, and I mean, it stands out.
yep. Uh,
Yeah,
okay.
these are stickers that were given to me also by another friend on Twitter, JJ. Um, his
Uh huh.
name's JJ, and he goes by his Twitter handle is JJ9892454. But he's a great friend on Twitter. They're stickers. They peel off. On
Hmm.
the back, it peels off, and you can stick those on any surface.
When I saw these 21s, I was reminded that you and I are both pretty adamant in the hashtag retire 21 community that Major League Baseball not having retired the number 21 is kind of it's a sore spot. And so I just wanted to make sure, and I'll put a little retired 21 in the description of this video, that
Mm.
people know that it's something that really needs to be pushed, because Clemente's number should have been retired years and years ago, and it's still not being retired. I would, insult is a little strong of a word, but it's not fair,
Yeah,
honestly.
I'm with you, Dan. And like a lot of people argue that, well, we can only have one number retired, and that's Jackie Robinson because of the social. He broke the social, the color barrier and the social justice and all that. But you know what what that what I don't think retiring Clemente's number diminishes Jackie's legacy in any way. I
I
mean,
agree. Yep.
Jackie is singularly phenomenal, just as Clemente is singularly phenomenal, but for different reasons. Jackie was, his work and what he did for social justice, it can't be measured. What Clemente did for the Latin community, for the Latin American community, and to really raise and elevate this idea that players are more than players; they're they can be great humanitarians.
Hmm.
And so that's why Clemente's number, in my opinion, needs to be retired.
But
I mean,
I mean, obviously, they named the award for him, the humanitarian award in baseball, which is 100% the way it should be. But Clemente, you're right. Clemente did things for the Latin community. He's not the first Latin player. I mean, the
no,
Latin players go all the way back into the 20s with Adolfo Luque. But you talk about somebody who transcended and made Latin culture something that could be honored and respected in the continental United States. In, I believe it was the '71 World Series, he was being interviewed by his friend Bob Prince, and went into a thanking Puerto Rico in Spanish, and I think it's one of the first times in sports history that a player was interviewed and spoke in Spanish. And I think that's the sort of groundbreaking type of, historical aspect of Clemente's career that I think really needs to be honored, especially today when the game has so many wonderful, great Latin players and Latin people, that saying, yes, we recognize that this game is in many respects a Latin game, and this was, if not the first Latin player, but definitely the first Latin player of a stature that requires the number to be retired. And I really think that, baseball, Major League Baseball these days has kind of messed up a lot of things, but that's one of the ones that really gets under my skin.
Yeah.
So that's my rant.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So I bring this up. You sent this to me. You've mentioned Twitter a lot, and I haven't mentioned it enough. There are people on Twitter who've sent me random acts of kindness, who have sold me cards way under comps, who've done wonderful things for me. I've hung out with them at shows. Yes, it's a absolutely amazing baseball card community, especially the vintage people. And most of us are older professionals. Some of us are younger, but there doesn't seem to be any kind of problems. It's people, so there's always something going on. But there seems to be such an amount of respect. And when things go terrible for people and people step up, to me, that's the true indication that you're in the right place. So I know what this is. I don't want to talk about it specifically unless you're comfortable talking about it. So why don't you tell us what you're comfortable talking about?
No, like you said, Dan, the Twitter community and the baseball Twitter community is fabulous. And like you said, I know I'm in the right place because of all the great people that I deal with on Twitter every day. So most people who I deal with on Twitter know that my daughter, she was 24 years old, and she passed away from a fentanyl overdose on December 20th, 2021. And this is after I had pretty much become ingrained in the Twitter hobby community. I'd been ingrained for almost 2 years at that point in the Twitter hobby community, and I'd met so many great people. And I try to be as positive as possible all the time. I don't like to get into arguments with people, and I end up just blocking people that I get into arguments with usually, because I don't want to carry it on, and I just don't. So, but 99.99% of the people were so great and have been so supportive of me. So when my daughter passed away, Dan, you were one of them. There's so many, I can't name everyone here because I don't want to leave somebody out. He's like, hey, you didn't mention me. But honestly, there was probably a group of about 25 to 30 people who made donations in my daughter's name to the Roberto Clemente Museum and the Roberto Clemente Foundation in my daughter's name. And so the museum and foundation responded by giving me these two wonderful pieces of art, and I've got them displayed, in my showcase here at home. And I'm just so grateful for everyone. I have a debt of gratitude for everyone on Twitter that I can never adequately repay.
Well, I can say this as somebody. I did not organize this. I went along for it, obviously, because it was important to me. But I believe it was Ben and Dylan who did a lot of the organization, and there was a lot of conversation, and the conversation was true. The conversation was, yes, this is a terrible thing to happen to any parent, but this particular person who we all loved and admired and said, this is maybe the most important thing we could do, is to just recognize this person, recognize what happened, and then also make it meaningful, and making it a contribution to an organization like Clemente's organization, which we know is going to do, wonderful things for people. So I think all around, it was one of the greater moments that I've been involved in, not only in the Twitter community, but in the hobby in general. And so, I'm sorry that it took what it took to get to that, but to say that you were respected, loved, and admired was obviously something that made it extra important. And the gentleman Ben, who I have wonderful things to say about, and of course Dylan, who everybody loves, is kind of the mayor of Twitter, so to speak, of
He is.
Twitter hobby. Two great people that Dylan I spent an entire day with, so in person. So I can tell you right now, it's not just the way he is on Twitter. He's that way in real life too. Ben, I've never actually met, and I hope to correct that at some point. But Curt, so I'm gonna just, I think we're gonna wrap it up, and
Yeah.
to say that this was wonderful, and that I'm so thankful that you came onto the show today, not only because of your awesome, just amazing, breathtaking Clemente collection and your fandom. It's not just that you collected his cards, but you saw him play live, which I didn't do, but also because of who you are and as a person. And it's really my honor to have you be the first guest, the first live guest on my show. So thank you, Curt, for everything.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you, Dan. I'm honored. It's my honor. And I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Okay. So we're at 46 minutes, which is more than twice my longest episode so far. But hey, if it's going good and you got the right people on, go as long as you can. So I just wanted to say, have a good weekend. Thank you so much for coming on, and listeners and viewers, thank you so much for sticking with us this long. And there was the payoff. So thanks again, Curt. We'll talk to you soon.